Good evening. Welcome to the MGM Grand in Las Vegas and the special primetime edition of Special Report. Tonight in the city that gambling built, we'll look at the incredibly high stakes for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as they try to get out of Vegas on the kind of winning streak that will carry them the final 3 weeks of this campaign. Their final debate will be right here in Las Vegas at UNLV Wednesday night, moderated by our own Chris Wallace. We will have reports, interviews, and analysis in a very fast-moving hour. But we start with a Fox News alert, our top story. Iraq's prime minister earlier this afternoon announced that long-awaited effort to retake the city of Mosul from ISIS terrorists has begun. Tonight, the special presidential envoy for the global coalition to combat ISIS, Brett McGurk, tweeted out, "Tonight, PM Abadi issued orders to initiate major operations to liberate Mosul after 2 years of darkness under ISIL terrorists." While the Iraqis are said to be in the lead, and technically, of course, they are, U.S. troops are right alongside. Some 5,000 plus U.S. troops are currently on the ground in Iraq, a steady buildup of force strength in recent months. U.S. Special Forces soldiers have been training and planning with the Iraqis. U.S. air power has been preparing the battlefield, taking out key ISIS positions in recent days. Let's get the latest from Iraq on the ground with GRN correspondent Owen Holdaway in the Kurdish-controlled capital of Erbil. Owen?
Good evening.
The
latest, basically, I just came back from. Oh yeah, the latest on the ground. I just came back from Kaza, where there's a large Peshmerga base, and the Iraqi army have been allowed to sort of be based through there, and they're going to make a major push, probably sometime starting in the morning. Additionally, in Karada, which is slightly north, and also in Nineveh, south of Mosul, there's been a big build-up of Iraqi forces there. So that additionally there, they have an airstrip there, which they'll use then to strike Mosul positions just around the city. So it does seem like that there is a major build-up, particularly in the southern quarter and in Nineveh, to actually attack Mosul.
Owen, what is the sense of the ISIS strength inside Mosul, and what kind of numbers they may be looking at?
The estimates are around about 4,000 fighters there. But the thing is, as you said in your introduction, they've been embedded in there for about 2 years. So they've very much been planning for this. I mean, when I went up recently to Karada, they'd already set on a lot of the oil fields, and they've also been digging tunnels within the city itself. I heard they've also released a lot of prisoners to then, supplement their forces. I think also what will happen is at a later date. I mean, this is very much the preliminary start, but when they start to hit the more urban centres of the city, which will take time, then it becomes increasingly difficult. And at that point, I mean, for instance, when they took Fallujah, it took.
In this fight?
They are in a supporting role, but I think the Iraqi army is very much taking the lead.
Okay, Owen Holdaway in the Kurdish-controlled capital of Erbil. Thank you. Joining me now from Washington, D.C., Mike Waltz, a former Army Special Forces commander, author of the book Warrior Diplomat. Mike, your sense of this operation and the challenges that are ahead taking Mosul?
Well, Brett, I'm looking at three key things. As you mentioned, we have Special Forces on the ground in a training role, but critically, they're also in an advising role. And what is going to be absolutely important is how far forward those advisors are allowed to go by the administration with the Iraqi army. It is critical that they are allowed to coordinate our air assets, the airstrikes, the medical evacuation from helicopters, the artillery pieces. The most complicated bits of this fight are going to be coordinated by the special operations advisors, and they cannot be held hundreds of miles back in these kind of centralized headquarters. They have to be forward with our troops. The next thing is that
when the Iraqi forces
Sure.
Sorry, when the Iraqi forces started to take ISIL at the very beginning, ISIS, as we call them, they obviously disintegrated because U.S. troops had largely pulled out.
Right.
President Obama had, after the announcement of a lack of a status of forces agreement, had decided that it was time to pull troops out, and the Iraqi forces fell apart. Do you think that if the rules of engagement are still restrictive, that the U.S. still can be the backbone for the Iraqis to lead the way here?
Well, you know, Mosul is a heavily populated a very large urban area. And we are going to, unfortunately, probably see civilian casualties, and we can't tie the hands of our forces the first time that happens. The other piece is that you have multiple actors on this battlefield. Yes, you have the Iraqi army, but you also have Shia militia, many of which are heavily influenced and advised by the Iranians, have various Kurdish factions, and then you have Sunni militias, many of which are being trained by the Turkish army. And again, it's critical that we are kind of the honest broker and able to tie all of those operational pieces together. And then importantly, we have to be forward to kind of win the peace. It truly does matter who holds Mosul after we've kicked ISIL out of it. Is it going to be the Shia militia, which have not behaved very well in many of the Sunni towns like Tikrit, or is it going to be the Kurds, or is it going to be the Iraqi army? We have to be heavily engaged to make sure that they act in a way that's responsible.
You've been on the ground working with indigenous forces.
Yes.
And if they are side by side, I mean, we could be talking about U.S. casualties here, something that this administration hasn't really seemed to have the stomach for in large operations.
Well, let me be clear. We can have a huge impact without actually pulling triggers. But you're right. We have to be forward enough to know what's going on in the fighting, to be able to advise the Iraqis at a tactical level, and to be able to bring all of those assets that they need, such as air power and artillery support, to help them. And we can't be so afraid to incur casualties that we undermine the entire effort. Yeah, our folks have to be forward, and they have to be able to have an impact.
And the coordination with the air assets, that's obviously already happening.
Well, that's right. Ironically, it is happening, but ironically, we can help prevent civilian casualties the farther forward that we are, to make sure that those airstrikes are very precise. That's something that our Air Force Joint Tactical Air Controllers, our Green Berets, our Navy SEALs do better than anybody else in the world. And that's, essentially the model that we used in the invasion of Afghanistan, where we had these Green Berets far forward, not necessarily putting the enemy in their sights, but forward enough to advise and assist those tactical commanders. And we've found that when we do that, they tend to behave a lot better. A lot of the bad behavior towards each other tends to kind of go by the wayside when the American forces are right there with them.
Mike Waltz, former Special Forces commander, has been on the ground, knows a lot. Mike, thanks for your expertise tonight.
Sure, thanks, Brett.
I recently spoke with retired Army 4-star General David Petraeus for an upcoming Fox News reporting special. Petraeus, of course, once commanded the 101st Airborne Division troops who were based in Mosul. I actually visited him there when I was covering the Pentagon. He was also CENTCOM commander and the general who oversaw the surge in Iraq. Petraeus told me that the fight for Mosul will be very difficult.
I think this will be a tough fight. ISIS is dug in, they have tunnels, they'll have improvised explosives, ambushes, and all the rest of that. But I don't think it's going to be as tough as we would have imagined it, say, 6 months or certainly a year ago. Each fight against the Islamic State has seen the Iraqis do a better job. The real issue here, though, is the issue of post-Islamic State governance. In Nainawa province, the capital of which is Mosul, a city of nearly 2 million people, this is the most complex human terrain in all of Iraq.
So, in other words, if Mosul falls as expected to Iraqi forces with U.S. help, the threat or danger from ISIS in Iraq doesn't immediately go away.
Well, the threat from the Islamic State will not go away for a number of reasons. The first is that they are going to become more guerrilla-like, insurgent-like elements. They'll break out, they'll break into cells. There certainly will be continued terror attacks. The real issue is, can you drive the level of violence down considerably so that you have a security situation that allows you to tackle the real issues, which are indeed political issues. These are issues of governance.
So Mike Waltz talked about as well. The push to retake Mosul will be the biggest military operation in Iraq since American troops left in 2011. And if successful, the strongest blow yet to the Islamic State. Now back to this country and another breaking story we've been following this afternoon. The search for whomever firebombed a Republican Party headquarters office in North Carolina. It happened last night. Police say a bottle of flammable liquid was thrown through the front window of the Orange County Republican Party headquarters in Hillsborough. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory saying it was, quote, clearly an attack on our democracy. The inside, a total loss, but fortunately no one was hurt. An adjacent building was spray painted with graffiti saying, quote, "Nazi Republicans, get out of town or else." Federal agents are investigating. Hillary Clinton's campaign tweeted this afternoon the attack on the Orange County headquarters of the North Carolina GOP office is horrific and unacceptable. Very grateful that everyone is safe. And from Donald Trump, quote, "Animals representing Hillary Clinton and Dems in North Carolina just firebombed our office in Orange County because we are winning." Now to the presidential race and Fox team coverage tonight. Mike Emanuel is outside the Clinton home in Chappaqua, New York, where the Democrat nominee is cramming for her last big test of what has been an exhausting and brutal election season. We start off, though, tonight with chief political correspondent Carl Cameron outside Trump Tower in New York, a common place where he's been, with a candidate under siege but fighting back hard. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. You're right. Donald Trump has been preparing for this debate basically in full sight for the last week, arguing that the system has been rigged against him, not only by what he calls crooked Hillary and the Democrats, but also by his Republican House Speaker going against him and what he has collectively referred to as the dishonest media. Trump kicked off Sunday, tweeting this morning, quote, "Polls close, but can you believe I lost large numbers of women voters based on made-up events that never happened? Media rigging election." The latest ABC News Washington Post poll shows in a four-way race, Clinton leads 47 to Trump's 43. Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson is at 5, and Jill Stein of the Green Party at 2. But the Wall Street Journal NBC poll has Clinton up 11 points, 48 to 37, with Johnson at 7 and again Stein at 2. Trump's denials last week that he ever forced himself on women in the aftermath of a video in which he described doing that included appearing to demean some of his accusers as unworthy of his alleged groping advances.
Believe me, she would not be my first choice, that I can tell you.
Trump this morning attacked Saturday Night Live on Twitter for last night's show opener.
What about all the women accusing you of sexual assault?
They need to shut the hell up.
Trump tweeted this morning, quote, "Watched Saturday Night Live, hit job on me. Time to retire the boring and unfunny show. Alec Baldwin, portrayal stinks. Media rigging election." Speaker Paul Ryan, who said he will no longer defend Trump nor campaign with him, said yesterday that he's confident the election will be fair and is not rigged. Several former Bush, McCain, and Romney campaign officials have made similar statements. So did Pence.
One of the great traditions of America is the peaceful transfer of power. The stakes are so high in this election, but as Donald Trump said in that first debate, say to you again today, we're going to accept the will of the American people.
When asked about Trump's request yesterday for drug testing before the next debate because Clinton seemed, quote, pumped up at the last one, Pence today sidestepped.
Well, look, all I know for sure is that Donald Trump's going to be ready for the debate on Wednesday night, and the American people are going to see someone who is prepared to lead this country.
But Trump was behind closed doors today, and as a consequence, some of his aides noticed that there was a lot more attention to some of those hacked Clinton emails released by WikiLeaks. But Trump tweeted this afternoon, quote, "The Democrats have a corrupt political machine pushing crooked Hillary Clinton. We have Paul Ryan, always fighting the Republican nominee." That's a reference, of course, to the House Speaker, who has said that he will not campaign nor defend Donald Trump, but disagrees with the idea that the election is being rigged. When Trump says these sorts of things, he often eclipses the media's opportunity to talk about the emails he says are not being reported adequately. Brett?
Hey, Carl, real quickly, is the preparation a little different for this one than previous?
Pretty much the same. They're behind closed doors. They're not doing the kind of podium stuff that Hillary Clinton likes to do with mock debates and murder boarding, but they're going over issues, and he has been trying out a lot of these new lines over the last few days, many of which are so controversial that it's likely that if they don't ask each other, meaning Hillary and Donald Trump, the moderators will probably bring them up as well. Brett?
All right, Carl, outside Trump Tower. Carl, thank you. Hillary Clinton insists she's holding the winning hand as we approach that Las Vegas debate. Donald Trump, of course, thinks she'll bust. In fact, there are some aides, Clinton aides, who think she's so far ahead she should fold right now, not even show up for the last one-on-one with Donald Trump. However, she continues her preparations today at her home in New York. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel is in Chappaqua tonight. Good evening, Mike.
Well, Brett, good evening. Running mate Tim Kaine has been very visible today, making stops in battleground Florida and doing multiple Sunday shows, while Hillary Clinton has been behind closed doors. Clinton spent much of her Sunday preparing for this week's final presidential debate. Fox has learned well-known Washington attorney Bob Barnett is once again helping Clinton prepare to face Donald Trump and questions from moderator and Fox News anchor Chris Wallace. The Clinton team continues dealing with the daily drip of emails being leaked from campaign chairman John Podesta's account. One reveals intense animosity within the Clinton world for Chelsea Clinton. Longtime Clinton advisor Doug Band wrote Podesta and Cheryl Mills an email in 2012 saying, quote, "As they say, the apple doesn't fall far. A kiss on the cheek while she is sticking a knife in the back and front." The emails also reveal frustration in the African-American community with businessman Frank White Jr. emailing Podesta in February, quote, "The campaign doesn't value black folks and takes us for granted." Then there's the criticism of the Democratic nominee, with the Center for American Progress's Neera Tanden writing Podesta about Clinton in August 2015, quote, "Her inability to just do a national interview and communicate genuine feelings of remorse and regret is now, I fear, becoming a character problem more so than honesty." On Fox News Sunday, Clinton's running mate was asked if these private messages going public has been embarrassing.
So, yeah, look, some of these emails that are leaked, if they're accurate, they show people offering, you know, opinions and mouthing off a little bit here and there. But that's the kind of thing that happens.
The Clinton campaign has picked up endorsements from the Colorado Reporter Herald, the Omaha World Herald, and the Wisconsin State Journal. Yet Kane's hometown newspaper, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, backed Libertarian Gary Johnson for president. Kane tried to put the best face on it.
This is the first time that they have chosen not to endorse the Republican ticket for president in my memory, certainly in all the years I've lived in Richmond. So the fact that they could not see clear to endorse the Republican ticket in Richmond, that was the news.
Finally, on the leaks, after the San Bernardino terror suspect was identified in media reports, Podesta emailed it would be better if a guy named Saeed Farouk was reporting on a guy named Christopher Hayes being the shooter instead of the other way around. Brett?
Wow. Mike Emanuel live in Chappaqua. Mike, thanks. We will check the other headlines when we come back, and also that breaking news of the operation in Mosul. As Hillary Clinton's State Department aide, did he try to influence the FBI email investigation? We have that story as well. We are live in Las Vegas for Sunset here. Sunday Primetime Special Report continues after the break. We're learning more tonight about the effort by a member of the Clinton State Department team working with an FBI agent to possibly influence the Bureau's investigation into her email scandal. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harridge has the latest.
On Fox News Sunday, Hillary Clinton's running mate was pressed on new allegations involving State Department Executive Patrick Kennedy.
To your knowledge, did anyone associated with Secretary Clinton or her campaign ask or instruct Kennedy to seek changes to classification of emails?
Absolutely not. I have no knowledge that that happened. Absolutely not.
Late Friday, the FBI sent a third batch of interviews from the Clinton investigation to the House Intelligence and Government Oversight Committees. Republican lawmakers briefed by staffers say Kennedy wanted the classification of at least one email changed in a way that would benefit the department as well as Clinton. And in exchange, there was discussion of more slots for FBI agents overseas. This is a flashing red light of potential criminality, Government Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz said. Both myself and Chairman Devin Nunes of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence are infuriated by what we have heard. Campaigning in Kansas, Congressman Mike Pompeo told Fox by phone,
"It is so representative of the behavior we have seen consistently from the State Department, where every effort was made to protect not our American servicemen in the field, not American national security information, but Hillary Clinton."
A State Department spokesman said this allegation is inaccurate and does not align with the facts. But one of Kennedy's subordinates told the FBI in this heavily redacted interview released in September that he was pressuring State Department employees. Quote, Kennedy held a closed-door meeting with Redacted and Redacted, where Kennedy pointedly asked Redacted to change the FBI's classification determination regarding one of Clinton's emails. Asked then about the allegation, a State Department spokeswoman read from a prepared statement.
We strongly refute those claims. We've been clear all along that our Freedom of Information Act review of former Secretary Clinton's emails was a complex and multi-step process.
While acknowledging that Clinton email classification and overseas posts for FBI agents were discussed in the same phone call, a Bureau spokesman said the issues were not connected and the email classification was never changed. The new FBI files could be public as early as tomorrow, when an independent review will be possible. Brett?
We'll follow this. Catherine, thank you. Special report, prime time. We're coming to you from Las Vegas. We'll be staying in Las Vegas until the debate. We'll be right back with two of the other people running for president and some shocking scenarios. Tonight we're going to learn a little bit more about two of the other candidates who are running for president this fall. We'll talk with independent Evan McMullin in just a few minutes here in Vegas. First, Green Party candidate Jill Stein. She joins us tonight from San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Stein, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Brett.
Your thoughts on this race, how it's shaping up, and what you're trying to do with your campaign?
Well, I think the American people have made it very clear what they think of this race, which is that it's not about them. This is a mockery of our democracy. These are the most disliked and untrusted candidates in our history. Even their own supporters, according to polls, don't really support them. They just really dislike the other major party candidate. And the American people are screaming for more voices and more choices. There are 4 candidates that are on the ballot in America. We not only have a right to vote, we have a right to know who we can vote for. And I encourage people to go to my social media site, Dr. Jill Stein, that's Dr. Jill Stein, and join us for a real open debate. We will be crashing the party and actually answering the questions that Donald and Hillary refuse to answer so that they can keep talking about who's the greater crook.
Dr. Stein, I know you've been following this email investigation. I know you've weighed in on it a bunch. I follow you on Twitter. One of the tweets was on Friday. You said the DNC had already selected Clinton before the primary began. Every vote for Clinton is a rubber stamp for elitist corruption. Are you seeing things in these WikiLeaks emails that are problematic for you? And tell us your feelings.
Well, I think, you know, the WikiLeaks emails confirm what we have seen previously. The DNC leaks at the time of the Democratic National Convention showed that there was a lot of collusion going on behind closed doors, that Bernie Sanders' campaign was basically sabotaged, what could have been a very strong and winning campaign, and that the DNC was collaborating with the Hillary Clinton campaign and with some members of the big media in order to smear Sanders and to really tilt the playing field against him. You know, in terms of emails, we've also seen that, you know, Hillary chose to make half of the volume of her emails as Secretary of State secret. And, you know, what are you doing as Secretary of State? You have that much discretionary time that half of your emails can be rendered about your private business and therefore taken off of the public record. So yeah, there's a lot to be concerned of, but it's not just Hillary, obviously. It's Donald as well, and we've seen that Donald is refusing to release his tax returns. Now we've seen that Donald is the sexual predator that he has bragged about being, that he has been offshoring his jobs, even while he talks about, you know, objecting to these trade agreements that offshore our jobs. So we've got two candidates who are representing, you know, the economic elite while the American people are being thrown under the bus. I'm the only candidate in this race that is not poisoned by big lobbyist money, big corporate money, and a super PAC. So I'm actually standing up for what the American people need and deserve: an emergency jobs program to solve the emergency of climate change, bailing out a generation of young people locked in debt like we did for the crooks on Wall Street, free public higher education, et cetera. This is what we need, and it is within our reach.
Yeah, first of all, obviously Hillary Clinton says she has been transparent, and that's obviously for people to look at and analyze on their own. And Donald Trump has denied these allegations. You, last time you were with us on Center Seat, said that you were disappointed that climate change and the environment hasn't come up in debates. Someone who I imagine that you line up with on this issue is former Vice President Al Gore, who was campaigning with Hillary Clinton in Florida. Take a listen.
Your vote really counts a lot. You can consider me as an exhibit A of that truth. Elections have consequences. Your vote counts. Your vote has consequences.
So he went on to say that votes for Ralph Nader in Florida cost him the election in 2000. Your thoughts on that and how he lines up with you?
Well, we're in a different place than 2000, but let's just say in 2000, the real votes were the votes that Al Gore could not win for himself, which actually defected over to the Republican Party and to George Bush's campaign. Ralph Nader's votes were a tiny fraction of that, and if you were going to blame Nader, you could blame every independent political party, each of which got more than the margin of difference. So the solution to a democracy on life support is not less democracy. To establishment state parties, that are okay, and we can't have any political opposition. That is two-party tyranny. That's not what democracy looks like. In this race, we actually have 4 choices, and the American people are actually screaming for those choices. And 76% of Americans are saying we need an open debate. They want to know who the other candidates are. Guys like Al Gore, are telling the American people, be good little boys and girls and take your marching orders from the political pundits and the party operatives. Well, you know what? They've been throwing us under the bus. And the American people have stood up and said, we don't buy it. We're tired of a rigged economy, and we're tired of the rigged political system that keeps us stuck in that rigged economy. The name of the game is getting the word out. We came up in the polls, from 4% to 12% among independents as the word is beginning to spread, despite the media blackout. And kudos, of course, to Fox for not being a part of that complete blackout. But we've had a tiny fraction of the exposure on media. Americans deserve to know who they can vote for.
You have a voice here. You've been on this show a couple of times. We enjoyed having you on, and we appreciate it. And we'll see you down the trail.
Thanks so much, Brett. Take care.
There are many fascinating scenarios being talked about right now concerning how the election could turn out, obviously. There is a path that could put former CIA officer Evan McMullin in the White House. He's here, independent candidate. Dr. Stein said there are 4 choices.
That's right.
There are 5 choices, right?
Well, I don't know which 4 she was talking about. If she included me in those 4, then she was correct. But there are more. There are many more, many who we've never heard of. But we're in this race, too, for sure.
Let me put up a poll in Utah, the Monmouth poll. It's a 5-way race here.
Right.
Donald Trump at 34%, Clinton at 28%, you're at 20%. This follows a number of different polls out of Utah that say you're right there.
Right.
And other states that don't poll, Idaho, you seem to be doing well.
Right.
Paint the picture for somebody how you are going to get to the White House, because that's the thing that most people I talk to say, hey, I like him, but how's he going to win?
Well, I would say that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are the 2 major party candidates, but next, we're the only ones who are competing for states. Jill Stein and Gary Johnson aren't doing that. They are on more ballots than we are on, although by Election Day we'll be on either on or as registered as a write-in in 40 to 45 states' ballots. But the reality is, Brett, that you've got to compete to win states in our system. That's how you get electoral college votes. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein aren't doing that. So anyway, we're focused on the Mountain West, where people are receptive to our message. That's where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were rejected in the primaries.
All right, well, what is the message? Just give me the elevator pitch here.
Well, the elevator pitch is very simple. It starts with the fact that I am the only conservative in this race. And it's sad to say, but it's true. So we're saying that. We're also saying that we're limited government people. Mindy Finn and I, my running mate, We stand for limited government. We stand for a commitment to the foundational principles upon which our country was started. The idea that all men and women are created equal, that we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We didn't see anyone standing for these principles in this election. That's why we got into the race. Of course, our odds are long, and they get better, though, if the race is closer. Right now, the race is not close. Hillary Clinton is dominating Donald Trump so handily in the Electoral College projections.
Right, but the way you win is winning a state or two, and it gets essentially nobody gets to 270, and it goes to the House of Representatives, right?
That's right, and again, that's very difficult, but that's the electoral opportunity for us. Again, it's a 3-month campaign. We got in because we thought the American people deserve better options. That's why it's not ideal, but it's what had to happen. Otherwise, we're standing for principle. We're standing on principle, which is something that the Republicans haven't done, and why they're in such disarray now.
And for people who say you're just a plant for Hillary Clinton to take votes away for Donald Trump.
I would say that if there are any plants in this race, it would have to be Donald Trump as a plant for Hillary Clinton. I don't think that's the case. I think people are competing. I have a constitutional right to run for president, which I'm exercising. But the reality is Donald Trump is beating himself. He is an absolutely horrendous, terrible candidate. He has no business representing an entire party. He has no business being president of the United States.
Governor Mitt Romney, who obviously ran for president, agrees with you on that point, and he talked about it just the other day. Take a listen.
They can come back together again or not is a darn good question. I happen to think that for that to happen requires a person of unusual skill. Absent that kind of leadership, I think it will be very difficult to put for the Humpty Dumpty to be put back together again.
He's talking there about the Republican Party, Evan, and he doesn't get to the point where he's endorsing you. And you have the Utah delegation, including the governor, Senator Mike Lee, Representative Chaffetz, Representative Mia Love, Representative Chris Stewart, and former Governor John Huntsman. All of them have pulled back from Donald Trump too, but they have not endorsed you.
That's right. Well, listen, we're not looking to validation, or we're not looking for validation from people who had supported Trump or who are on the fence. I mean, we're starting a new conservative movement here that, again, rededicates itself to the truth that all men and women are created equal and that we all have a right to individual liberty. The last thing we're going to do is go looking for validation from people who didn't stand up to Trump or now are pulling back their support but unwilling to say what they're for, which is what real leadership is. Real leadership is saying, I don't agree with that, I agree with this, and then fighting for that. But they're not doing that, but that's part of the problem here. They're putting, in many cases, and each one is a little bit different, they've got a different situation, each one of them, but across the board, Republicans are putting party and power over principle and country, and it's what's happening is just horrendous. I mean, the party's falling apart, and I agree with the governor that I'm skeptical that it can be put back together. That's why Mindy Finn and I are building a new conservative movement, and we're seeing incredible momentum over the past couple of weeks especially.
We will follow your race, and you're welcome here. You've been on center seat. Thank you for being here. Let's get some hometown insight into what Vegas voters are really thinking. Colton Lockheed is Nevada political reporter for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and Michelle Rindels is a Nevada-based political reporter for the Associated Press. Thanks for being here. Michelle, first to you. Issues here. We heard a little bit from voters there, but what's driving the conversation here in Nevada overall?
I think it's really the economy here. We're one of the hardest hit during the recession, of course. Skyrocketing unemployment. There's been a lot of signs that that's come down, that in fact a couple weeks ago we regained all the jobs that we had lost. But there's certain industries that are still really hurting. Construction has not rebounded. There's a lot of people out of work and having to travel out of state. So there's still a lot of instability. Wages are still a big issue.
Yeah, so Colton, the presidential candidates are spending a lot of time here. This is a big battleground swing state. You agree the economy kind of driving the day?
Yeah, the economy is one of the bigger talking points right now for both candidates. Here, for Nevadans, like she mentioned, we were one of the hardest hit in the recession. Our housing market, I think, was one of the, I don't think it's still quite where it hasn't hit where it was pre-2006, where you see other states like Colorado where it's surpassed that. I think the economy and I think immigration is a big issue here. We have one of the highest per capita Latino populations And so on either side, that's a big talking point.
Yeah, it's very emotional. Let's talk about the Senate race, and it's very tight here in the Senate race. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, up against Republican Joe Heck. Remember, this is Senator Reid's seat, and it's 40% to 35%. In the 8 News Now poll, the average is a little tighter than that, with Heck leading a couple of polls. Michelle, I mean, what is this race looking like?
Very tight. It's really going to depend on how many voters turn out. Heck had been leading for a long time, but just by a small margin. But now he's unendorsed Trump. There's just more turmoil in that campaign.
Is that causing him a problem, or is it kind of, how does that play here?
I think it's yet to be determined. There's polls on either side. Some show it's a wash. The Republican ones show it's not really net loss for him. Democrat Commission polls show that it is a net loss for him. So I think it'll be a matter of, over the next couple days and weeks, are people still angry? You saw him booing when people were booing him when he unendorsed Trump. Is that going to wear off? Are people going to, in the end, go with him anyway?
Yeah, Colton, Las Vegas knows Donald Trump. He's got a building here. He's been here. How does that play in that Senate race particularly?
I think, like Michelle mentioned, the unendorsement, we haven't seen how it's going to play out, but that is something that his opponent, Cortez Masto, is really kind of harping on right now. What
other issue besides Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and their appeal is driving that Senate race?
I think jobs, especially, and women's rights, I think is something that the Cortez Masto has really attacked him on, is his stance on Planned Parenthood and a few other issues kind of relating to women's rights.
Okay, last thing, as you look to the debate on Wednesday, one would think it's going to be fiery. What are you all looking for from kind of a Nevada perspective?
I think it'll be interesting to see how he addresses immigration again. That's always a big point for people here.
You can guess. I mean, he's not going to back off, something tells me.
Probably.
But who knows?
Yeah.
I think it'll be, hearing maybe some more policy from the candidates, maybe if we can possibly get away from some of the controversies that have kind of surrounded them. I think people in Nevada, we have a large percentage of undecided voters. I think they want to hear some of the stances, especially when it relates to jobs and immigration.
If there's anybody that can do it, Chris Wallace can do it, can keep the train on the tracks, but we'll see. Michelle, Colton, thank you very much. We'll get back here to Las Vegas for some final thoughts from the Vegas Strip. Looking live there at the Las Vegas Strip, Harley-Davidson Cafe. I asked somebody, is it busy this week? And they said, oh, yeah, it's busy. We've got the Lakers. We've got Jimmy Buffett. There's no one talking about a debate, but that's also happening here in Las Vegas. An invitation to stick with Special Report and Fox News, of course, all week leading up to that big debate Wednesday night. And, of course, our breaking story at the top of the hour today, the Iraqi Prime Minister announcing that operation to try to retake Mosul from ISIS terrorists, U.S. Special Operations Forces, and some 5,000-plus U.S. troops on the ground with the Iraqi forces. They are launching that operation as of tonight.